The realm of the cosmos was a stage for many a collision, but none had prepared the universe for the magnitude of what was to come. In the heart of the universe, the enigmatic planet Apokolips loomed, a fiery, mechanical world dominated by the tyrannical god Darkseid. He sat upon his obsidian throne in his palace, surveying his dominion with cold, calculating eyes. Despite his unyielding control over countless worlds, whispers of defiance in neighboring galaxies had reached his ears. Among them was a lone warrior, an avatar of chaos, destruction, and unstoppable might. In another corner of the multiverse, Cain Marco, known as the Juggernaut, strode through a battlefield of broken steel and crumbled fortresses. His task was simple: destroy everything in his path. Empowered by the mystical gem of Cyttorak, his strength was unparalleled, his momentum unstoppable. But this time, the destruction he wrought caught the attention of a force unlike any he had faced. Apokolips sentries reported strange energy readings in a distant galaxy, an anomaly carving a path of destruction across dimensions. The ruler of Apokolips was intrigued. Darkseid rose from his throne, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed into the void of his surveillance monitors. A single word escaped his lips, dripping with menace. "Bring him to me." Juggernaut, unaware of the eyes watching him, smashed through another dimension's planetary defenses. He was on a rampage, but not by choice. Cyttorak had grown restless, demanding more chaos to sustain his champion's power. Juggernaut was but a pawn in the hands of the mystical deity. However, even pawns could find themselves crossing paths. With gods, Darkseid dispatched his elite forces, the parademons, to intercept Juggernaut. They swarmed him in numbers that would have overwhelmed entire armies. Yet, against Juggernaut, they were mere flies. Their energy blasts bounced harmlessly off his impervious form, and their attempts to impede his progress only fueled his rage. With a thunderous roar, Juggernaut swung his massive fists, scattering the parademons like leaves in a storm. Darkseid watched the battle unfold from his throne, his expression impassive. The reports confirmed what he had suspected. This was no ordinary force of destruction. The power of Cyttorak coursed through Juggernaut, making him a being of pure, unstoppable energy. For the first time in eons, Darkseid felt a sliver of excitement. As the epic unfolds, do not forget to subscribe, like and drop a comment for more epic adventures. He opened a boom tube, stepping through it with the grace of a predator closing in on its prey. On the other side, Juggernaut stood amidst the ruins of a once thriving planet, his chest heaving as he surveyed the destruction he had wrought. The air around him crackled with residual energy, and the ground trembled beneath his feet. Then, the air shifted. A dark, oppressive presence filled the atmosphere, and Juggernaut turned to see a towering figure emerge from a swirling portal of light and shadow. Clad in armor that seemed to radiate power and despair, Darkseid stepped forward, his glowing red eyes locked onto his target. "So," Darkseid said, his voice a deep rumble that resonated across the battlefield, "you are the one who dares to disrupt my order." Juggernaut smirked, cracking his knuckles as he sized up the god before him. "You must be the big bad they sent to try and stop me. Spoiler alert, you won't." Darkseid's expression didn't change. "Your arrogance is matched only by your ignorance. I am no mere soldier, I am the end." The two titans stood face to face, their immense power radiating like twin stars, threatening to collide. Juggernaut took a step forward, the ground beneath him splintering with each movement. Darkseid did not move, his hands still clasped behind his back. "Let me make this simple," Juggernaut growled. "I'm the Juggernaut. Once I start moving, nothing can stop me. Not you, not your army, not your little planet of machines." Darkseid raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Is that so?" He extended one hand, his fingers curling slightly as an aura of crimson energy formed around him. Then let us test this claim, creature. Juggernaut charged, a living missile of raw power aimed directly at the new god. Darkseid stood motionless, waiting for the impact. The collision sent shockwaves across the battlefield, ripping apart what little remained of the planet's surface. For the first time, Darkseid stepped back, his boots grinding against the shattered ground as he absorbed the force of the blow. But Darkseid's counterstrike was immediate. He raised a hand and unleashed a beam of searing Omega energy, striking Juggernaut square in the chest. Juggernaut roared, pushing through the attack as his indomitable will clashed with Darkseid's godlike power. The battle had only just begun, and already it promised to shake the foundations of reality itself. Two forces, one of unstoppable momentum, the other of immovable domination, were destined for a clash that would decide whose power truly reigned supreme. The battlefield was an apocalyptic ruin. Shattered mountains, scorched craters, and seas of molten rock bore testament to the unrelenting clash between two titans. The Juggernaut, fueled by Cyttorak's boundless power, charged relentlessly, his thunderous footsteps shaking the very fabric of the planet. Across from him stood Darkseid, the ruler of Apokolips, his glowing red eyes burning with contemptuous calm. "You're slowing down, brute," Darkseid taunted, his voice devoid of emotion but laced with the weight of inevitability. Juggernaut snarled, his chest heaving as he dug his fists into the ground. "I don't slow down, I don't stop. You'll break before I do." With a roar, Juggernaut charged again, his massive frame crashing forward like an avalanche of raw power. His fists smashed into Darkseid's outstretched hands, and the resulting shockwave obliterated the nearby landscape. But this time, Darkseid didn't move. His feet planted firmly, he absorbed the force of Juggernaut's assault with ease. "You mistake power for supremacy," Darkseid said coldly, "but power without purpose is meaningless." With that, Darkseid unleashed his Omega beams. Crimson energy surged from his eyes, snaking through the air with unnatural precision before slamming into Juggernaut's chest. The mystical force of Cyttorak shielded the Juggernaut from immediate destruction, but the beams didn't dissipate. They lingered, twisting and turning, seeking a weakness. Juggernaut roared in defiance, forcing himself forward despite the Omega, beams tearing at him. His body glowed with Cyttorak's energy, resisting the overwhelming force, but cracks began to appear in the mystical armor that enveloped him. "You think this is enough to stop me?" Juggernaut growled, each step heavier than the last. His indomitable will pushed him closer to Darkseid, but the strain was evident. Darkseid's lips curled into the faintest smirk. "You misunderstand. My beams do not stop you. They destroy the concept of you." With a wave of his hand, Darkseid amplified the power of the Omega beams, and this time they penetrated deeper, bypassing Cyttorak's enchantments and striking at the essence of Juggernaut himself. The unstoppable force faltered his steps, slowing as the beams sapped his momentum. "No!" Juggernaut roared, summoning every ounce of strength he had. His fist lashed out, connecting with Darkseid's chest in a desperate attempt to turn the tide. The blow sent ripples through Darkseid's armor, forcing him to take a single step back. But the new god was unfazed. "Impressive," Darkseid admitted, brushing the dust from his armor, but ultimately futile. Darkseid raised his hand, and the ground beneath Juggernaut erupted in flames. The energies of Apokolips surged upward, enveloping Juggernaut in a maelstrom of destruction. Darkseid's Omega beams struck again, this time converging on Juggernaut's head. The mystical gem of Cyttorak, the source of Juggernaut's power, flickered as if resisting Darkseid's overwhelming might. "You cannot defy me forever," Darkseid said, his voice booming like thunder. "Your strength is formidable, but it pales in comparison to the will of a god. Juggernaut let out a final defiant roar as he charged one last time. His body, battered and cracked, glowed with the remnants of Cyttorak's power. He swung, his fist with all his might, aiming for Darkseid's head. Darkseid caught the blow in his palm. The sheer force caused the ground beneath them to collapse, but Darkseid held firm. He tightened his grip on Juggernaut's fist, and with a sudden surge of strength, he twisted, snapping Juggernaut's arm with a sickening crack. Juggernaut screamed in pain, but Darkseid didn't stop. He drove his knee into Juggernaut's chest, shattering his mystical armor. For the first time, Juggernaut staggered, blood dripping from his mouth as he fell to one knee. Darkseid loomed over him, his eyes glowing brighter than ever. "You are an impressive tool of destruction, Juggernaut, but even the unstoppable must bow to the inevitable." With a final blast of Omega energy, Darkseid struck Juggernaut directly in the chest, severing his connection to Cyttorak. The mystical energy that had empowered him dissipated, leaving Cain Marco kneeling before Darkseid, mortal and broken. Darkseid stared down at the defeated Juggernaut, his expression devoid of triumph. "You were never the threat. You were merely the distraction." With a wave of his hand, Darkseid summoned a boom tube. His parademons swarmed in, dragging the defeated Juggernaut toward the portal. "Take him to Apokolips," Darkseid commanded. "Perhaps I'll find a use for him yet." As the boom tube closed, the ruined battlefield fell silent. The clash of unstoppable force and immovable might had ended, and Darkseid stood victorious, his gaze turned toward the stars, already contemplating his next conquest. For the ruler of Apokolips, there were no limits, only inevitable victories.